My name's Danielle, and this is my journey in trying to understand my dyslexia.
John McDonald, 46.
And Catherine McDonald, 46. Am I 46?
45.
I'm 46.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
she's not, she's wrong, she's 45. Oh, no.
Oh, shit. I'm 46. Oh, no, you're 46. I'm 45, sorry.
Idiot.
Danielle's a quirky little character. She takes things very personally.
Everything she does, everything's got to be 100%.
She's a really hard worker, and she's done so well for herself.
We never, even though we knew there was something wrong when we was in England, or you did, I probably didn't recognise it early enough, which is probably the most disappointing thing. For me, it's when she was in her last sort of year of John Curtin, and the effort she was putting in to actually have just a normal everyday life like every other person does. It just makes you realise what she must have gone through over the years. For Danielle, there was a lot of anger growing up.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that's probably down to wanting to do better than she's actually doing. Quite young, about 3 or 4 years old, she was underdeveloped in her speech, and until we came here, that was when it was diagnosed.
And obviously, she didn't find out she had dyslexia until she was 15. So yeah, that's quite a big change in her life. And like you say, you know, when you're younger, if somebody told you had dyslexia when you were 4, it doesn't have that effect than when you're told when you're 14 or 15. You're in your high school, you don't want to feel different from anybody else, you want to feel the same. To
provide that care factor, if you like, to making sure that somebody gets what's required to actually get you through it. So, and I think that's what John Curtin definitely did, yeah.
We went to the school for a meeting to discuss Danielle's pathway options. Danielle chose that she wanted to do 3A, 3B levels. As a parent, we were concerned about this, but John Curtin were very supportive with this with Danielle, and Danielle chose that was the right option for her.
And obviously with Danielle taking on the 3A, 3B, but they encouraged it as well by obviously making sure she had that extra support. It actually had quite an effect on her, and to the point where she was having panic attacks. You know, to the point where I'm like, why is she doing this to herself? Why is she pushing herself to the point? But because she wanted to be the same as everybody else, she wanted to have an ATAR, and she wanted to do it for herself as well. It's not just because of the ATAR. She wanted to do it for herself. She done it.
I want you to state your name, age, and the type of dyslexia you have.
Okay, Stephanie, I am 10 years old and I have mild dyslexia.
As I've said a few times today, I was diagnosed quite late in life. And I kind of always wished, after meeting you specifically, I wished that I was diagnosed earlier, because I could see how much potential you had at such a young age. So in saying that, what do you think the benefits are of getting diagnosed early on?
There's some negatives and positives. I get tutoring, a bit more help, and you get a tiny bit less homework than everyone else. Some people can get bullied, and with my effects, I got bullied a bit, and it messed up on my grades this year, and yeah.
When you were diagnosed as dyslexic, how did this change the way you saw life?
I would say it is hard at the first point, but soon you'll get used to it. It isn't the only thing you have. You are unique in your own way. Everybody's unique.
My name is Vicky. I'm the director of the centre. I trained overseas, and then Australian Dyslexic Association became available to me in Australia. So I then went and trained there. When we moved to Australia, I realised that my son was going to get missed in the system here. So therefore I then became an advocate and an awareness campaigner for dyslexia in Western Australia since then.
Tell us a little bit about the Language and Literacy Learning Centre. What is it?
So I set up the centre back in 2012. We built initially a tutoring centre, and then over time it's evolved. We developed into this homeschooling philosophy of making sure these kids have choice. So on an academic component, we follow evidence-based practices. But I set this centre up for my son, who is ADHD. So for me, there's a lot of movement based in what we do.
Just maybe give us a bit of an understanding of what multisensory learning is for someone who hasn't come across it.
Okay, so multisensory learning is about incorporating every facet of the senses into teaching, making sure that obviously our kids' visual is more successful, but that doesn't mean that we don't require the rest of them. So it's using as many senses as possible to teach the concept.
What kind of stresses can dyslexia impact upon a person's life?
Mental health. We have had students coming in as young as 12 who've already been rehabbed for anorexia. We have a student that came in year 3. She was making herself sick before going to school. Kids that are coming in on suicide watch at 14 and 15. We've had adults at 35, 36 back into the mental health clinics. The damage it does when you are day in and day out made to feel as a failure. The damage it does in the developmental years of the brain, those primary formation years through childhood, you're basically being reinforced that you're stupid. We see a lot of the long-term damage, the adults who are damaged from the schooling, the teenagers, the 20s, 30s, 40s that are still struggling with that sense of failure, that lack of self-esteem.
It's like the one thing that I've been struggling with myself is, what is your understanding of dyslexia?
So dyslexia is a neurological condition. Its severity is impacted from environmental impacts in the early years of learning language from 0 to 5, and also the genetic markers that are activated at 21 weeks of pregnancy.
With non-dyslexic people, what do they need to understand about dyslexia?
We ensure that we empower all our families through education. So our adults and our children are working towards recognised qualifications. And people need to understand that actually they normally have an average to above average IQ. They will normally solve problems far better than a neurotypical person. You just need to give them a chance to do it.
Yeah, completely agree. Sorry, I'm actually getting a little bit emotional just listening to that.
You need to put 100% effort into what you do. If you put 100% effort into what you're doing, you will get there.
Don't let it stop you. Just keep going. Persevering is all you can do.
Don't let dyslexia stop you from trying anything, because you can do it.
What I've learned in this time, the biggest thing that for me is to actually be accepting of myself and realise that there are going to be times where I'm not going to be the best at something, and that's okay. I just got to keep trying. I see myself in the future doing what I'm already doing now that I have the knowledge. So I know exactly where I am with my dyslexia. I know that how it affects me, and I know that there are ways that I can learn to kind of go around that. And although it is hard, it is also something that makes you stronger as a person. The biggest thing that I can say to anyone with dyslexia, or anyone who is thinking they might have dyslexia, just get help. Just talk to someone. There is definitely strengths in being dyslexic, and obviously there is going to be struggles, but there's always a good and a bad with anything you do.